Do you want a job in the federal government? Well, buckle up because we're going to break down why the White House is warning of a potential hiring freeze, what this means for federal agencies, and most importantly, what it means for you. To understand what is happening, let's break down the federal spending process and why this year's budget situation is unique. The way it's supposed to work is that Congress passes a full budget by the start of the fiscal year in October. This budget provides money for federal agencies to hire staff, develop programs, and address challenges. But this year, Congress is stuck on a continuing resolution, on a CR, and basically that's a stopgap funding measure that keeps the spending levels at last year's rate. So while we don't have a government shutdown, we have outdated spending levels that do not account for inflation or growing public demand of services. Let's look at the numbers. The federal budget for non-defense agency was only set to increase by 1% in 2025. That isn't even enough to cover inflation. And with this CR, we have agencies like the IRS, FAA, Veterans Affairs. They're essentially being asked to do more with less money. Let's start with the IRS. They were set to use $20 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act in order to stimulate more hiring, in order to update systems, provide better services for taxpayers that have questions. Now that money is off the table. So what this means to the average taxpayer is they could be waiting a lot longer. They could be left in a state of confusion even longer than they were last year. And a lot of people that I'm talking to from the IRS, they're saying that there's already a hiring pause. You might be wondering, well, what's the difference between a freeze and a pause? Aren't those two things the same? And no, the answer is not really. There's three main differences: the scope, the duration, and the impact. So with a hiring pause, that could impact certain sub-agencies. So it's not the entire agency, but maybe this department here, that department there, they're not hiring for a short period of time. A freeze is usually a longer time duration, and the impact is agency-wide. And a lot of times it's throughout the entire federal government unless you have an imminent needed position. If you are needed like a law enforcement agent or something like that, then yeah, you're going to come in to work regardless if we have a shutdown or not. Let's move over to the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. This is another federal agency that's feeling the pressure. They were in the middle of hiring all these new air traffic controllers. They've been short for years. They couldn't get enough air traffic controllers. They finally are starting to onboard some of these people. A hiring freeze would stop the hiring, but it would also probably pause the training that some of these people are currently in. And if you do not have air traffic controllers at a lot of these airfields, a lot of these airports, it's going to impact travel. This means more delays and less safety. Then we have the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA. They're also in a tough spot. They had to slow down the hiring of their healthcare workers in 2024. They had plans to hire more in 2025. They asked for about $6.6 billion to help them avoid stopping the care that many veterans require. There are a lot more veterans out there that are now entitled to health care because largely of the PACT Act. Millions of veterans that were not allowed to be seen at a VA hospital because they didn't have a VA-connected disability. They are now allowed to go, but they need to have the healthcare workers there. They just can't show up to an understaffed hospital without enough doctors and nurses there and just wait, and hopefully one of these hours, one of these days, they might get the treatment that they need. The Social Security Administration has also been struggling to fill their roles due to past budget cuts. The SSA already has enough troubles as it is. Year over year, it continues to rank at the bottom when it comes to large federal agencies. Employees, they're not happy there. So a hiring freeze would only make things worse, leading to longer wait times. Longer times in order to hear back from your disability claim. So it's not just a staffing issue, it is a public service crisis. Even the Justice Department isn't immune. They've already announced an onboarding freeze, meaning the judges, the staff that were supposed to come on board, well, they're not going to be able to come, at least not right now. So what that means is there's going to be an ongoing growth of the backlog cases. And the immigrants are going to be left in legal limbo for much longer. Here's the big picture. A hiring freeze is not just about thousands of unfilled jobs. What it comes down to is The employees that are there now, they're going to be asked to do more with less. So you're going to be putting stress on the federal workforce. Then public service is going to go down. So when it comes to reaching out, the public reaching out to these federal agencies, to these customer service representatives, they're not going to be hearing back in a timely manner. It's already rough as it is now. It's only going to get worse. And it also means less jobs for you to be applying to. Here are a few other federal agencies that will be facing consequences. The Environmental Protection Agency. They're going to see potential delays in hiring scientists, and field inspectors could slow environmental regulation enforcement. The CDC, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. A freeze could halt hiring for public health roles, impacting disease surveillance. And the Department of Education. Limited funding might delay the hiring of policy analysts, grant managers for federal education programs. So what should you do if you're looking for a federal job? The first thing is diversify your search. Consider other levels of government. Look at your city, your county, your state government jobs. Also, look at the private sector. You could be applying for a federal government job and also have another resume targeted towards the private sector and see which one compensates you the best. Now, even if there is a freeze, if the job announcements are still up, and many of them will be up, look for the 12-month roster positions, because you can apply one time and yeah, maybe the government is going through a hiring freeze for a month or two, but then once it's lifted, that announcement might still be used. So you could still be considered multiple times throughout next year. If you find yourself in the middle of the hiring process and then there's a hiring freeze, even if you received your tentative job offer and they've given your information to the security team and they're running your background check right now, and then tomorrow there's a hiring freeze, all progress will stop. You will be left there for a series of weeks or months, depending on how far out that hiring freeze goes. Once the government is back open and there is no more freeze, they will resume progress. Now, I was in that same situation years ago. I was in a position where I had the tentative job offer. In fact, I had the final job offer, and I was contacting them every couple of weeks. Hey, do you got the funding? Can we make progress? Is there anything I can do on my side? Because I'm trying to get this thing going. I'm trying to show up. I want my EOD, my entrance on duty date. And it's important to stay in contact with the human resource specialist, but just understand it's going to take some time. Another thing that's important is that you sharpen your skills. And that doesn't mean go back to university. That doesn't mean spend $10,000 on a course. It doesn't mean that. There are ways where you can develop and further refine your skills, and you can do it completely free. You can do it on LinkedIn Learning. You can do it on Coursera. You can do it YouTube. You can try to be self-taught. You can get together with groups in your community. Practice your skill. If your skill is JavaScript or AI or cybersecurity, find areas where you can polish it up, refine it, start doing achievements. Like when you volunteer and you're able to bring the connectivity level of the community center, that's something that you can document. That's an achievement that stands out on a resume. Start doing that. Don't just sit there and let your skills deteriorate. Now, even if there is a hiring freeze, the good thing about that is hiring freezes, they don't last forever, right? The most recent one lasted 3 months. That was in 2017. And that was as soon as President Trump started his first term. One of the reasons a lot of people are a little bit nervous about his second term. Is he going to start his second term off the way he started off his first term? By enacting a hiring freeze? Maybe. Maybe even, it might be probable. Maybe it's a greater than even chance of it occurring. But what are you going to do in that situation? If you're a current federal employee, you might be furloughed. And what that means for you is you're not going to get a paycheck for weeks, maybe even months. But if you are a federal employee, you will be getting back pay. Once the government opens back up, you will be getting back pay for the time that you were not paid. Now, if you're a federal employee, let's say NAF, non-appropriated funds, well, your money doesn't come from the same pot of money. So you could potentially keep working your job. A lot of these jobs are on military bases, at the bowling alley, at the MWR center. So that might not threaten your job security at all. You could still be getting paid, but it depends. And then again, we have agencies that are funded differently. Every agency has a certain way that it's funded. So if you belong, let's say, to the Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture, It's in your best interest to research that information, to ask around and see if there is a shutdown, how are we affected? Ask that question. If you are interested in getting a federal government job, I did a live stream recently. I answered over a dozen questions. A lot of these questions could be on your mind. If you're interested in that, I want you to check this video out next. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please click like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.